Just a fantastic day to be here. If you are watching online, man, thank you for joining us. We know that most people will, as you can tell through statistics, most people will never walk into a new place unless they've viewed them online. So if you're watching online, we look forward to meeting you soon. And but some of you I know have asked, they've been like, man, what are these chairs? We've never had these chairs. And if some of you have never even seen these chairs, they are absolutely the most uncomfortable chairs in the building. So they're getting used as a prop because they are like sitting on rocks. And but y'all get to it. I want to read a story to you that I heard just a few months ago that it just really gripped my heart. A man's daughter had asked the local pastor to come and pray with her father. When the pastor arrived, he found the man lying in bed with his head propped up on two pillows and an empty chair beside his bed. The pastor assumed that the old fella had been informed of his visit and simply said, "I guess you were expecting me." Now, some of you will never have the privilege to be able to speak with people in their last days and to be able to pray with them and connect with them and share your heart with them. When we are doing the work of God, we end up, that's a lot of times where comfort needs to be. And so I have in many times spent time with families in the last moments of their loved one's life, and there is something about walking into a room and being able to show care and to show love. The pastor says this, "I'm the new pastor at the local church, and when I saw the empty chair, I figured you were expecting me to show up." "Oh yeah," the bedridden man said, "the chair. Would you mind closing the door?" Puzzled, the pastor shut the door. The man said, "I've never told anyone this, not even my daughter, the one who called you. But all of my life, I've never known how to pray. At church, I used to hear my pastor talk all the time about prayer, but it went straight over my head. I didn't know what it meant. I didn't understand it. So I abandoned every attempt at prayer. Until one day, about 4 years ago, my best friend said to me, 'Joe, prayer is just a simple matter of having a conversation with Jesus. Here's what I suggest you do. Sit down on a chair, place an empty chair in front of you, and in faith, see Jesus in the other chair. It's not spooky,' he said, because Jesus told him, 'I will always be with you.' Then just speak and listen the same way you're doing right now." So the bedridden man told the pastor, "I've tried it and liked it so much that I do it several hours a day. I'm careful, though. If my daughter walked in and saw me talking to an empty chair, she would have a nervous breakdown and send me to the funny farm." The pastor was deeply moved by the story and encouraged the bedridden man to continue on the journey. Then he prayed with him and returned back to the office. 2 nights later, the pastor received a phone call from the daughter to let her know that her dad had passed away. The pastor asked, "Did he seem to pass away in peace?" The daughter said, "Yes, when I left the house around 2, he called me over to his bedside, told me one of his corny jokes, as every good dad would, and kissed me on the cheek. When I got back home from the store, I found him passed away. But something strange had happened. In fact, beyond strange, it was absolutely weird. Apparently, just before he passed away, he leaned over and rested his head on the chair beside the bed." We're in this series called Momentum, and what does this mean? How does this have impact and influence in our life? I will tell you very much so that prayer needs to become an important facet, an important part of your daily life, but our lack of understanding will keep us from having a great conversation with our best friend. Your lack of understanding, your lack of this idea of knowing, how is it that I pray? What is it that I say when I pray? We get to the point that we feel like we have to, we see people pray on TV and we feel like, well, if I don't sound like that, if I don't act like that, then I'm just going to walk away from prayer altogether, because my lack of understanding on what I should do keeps us away from having a great conversation. We get uncomfortable with what we don't understand. We get uncomfortable with what we have not practiced. I don't know about you, but in my life, like those first few times I do something, there is a level of awkwardness that you have to live through. Okay, are you with me? If you've never tried something new, if you've lived your life in like in the repetitive mode of doing the same thing all the time, get outside of your routine, try something new, and just see how awkward it is for a while. Because what we don't understand and what we haven't practiced, what we end up doing is we do this. Instead of learning, we quit. Instead of growing, we quit. Instead of pushing through, we quit. Why? Not because it's not important. It's because it becomes uncomfortable. And when we get uncomfortable, we kind of backtrack. Because we're being taught over and over, our kids are being taught that you do what you're comfortable with. Do what you feel is right. When we get uncomfortable, we quit. Christ is as close as the person sitting next to you, as close as the person in the chair right across from you. Do not let your uncomfort with the unknown keep you from communicating with God. Because in this idea of building momentum, it is not possible to have momentum in your spiritual life unless you have momentum in your prayer life. Every Sunday, we've taken on a new initiative at our church with our volunteers about spending intentional time in prayer. Why is that? Because that would be like me trying to have it growing in my relationship with my wife without ever saying a word to her. Is that really possible? Can you grow in a relationship with somebody and never communicate with them? What do? You grow apart. So what is prayer? Very simply, genuine conversation with our Creator. Brooke and I were up just last week, late, and we've found ourselves in our life probably now that we have 3 kids and we both work full-time, we have Anchor, which is what we love, and so we are on the go all the time, that usually the only time we can actually have conversation is usually 11 or 12 o'clock laying in bed. Anybody you feel like the only time you can actually talk is when everything else is shut off. And we were talking about church, we were talking about family, talking about our future, and talking about our finances. I mean, you name it. We spent like 2 hours just talking about stuff. And the next morning I woke up and I was on my way to work and I was just feeling very convicted. Have anybody ever done that? You're just you don't even really know why, but it's I feel like I'm not being good enough for God. Anybody? I mean, am I the only one? I guess so. Okay. Yeah. We have prayer after church for those of you who... No, just... But after several hours of talking, I began to realize how lacking my conversational life was with God. And to some extent, even in my own life, I am still trying to figure out what that healthy conversation looks like. Because what I've learned about conversation is if I do all the talking, it's really not a conversation. It's more me whining and asking. More me sitting back going, God, I need this. God, I wish you would do this. God, I don't do that with my wife. Why would I ever do that with my Creator? So I was on the way to work and I just felt like, God, I'm not understanding. Why is it that I can't have that kind of healthy conversation with you, but I can with my wife? Because if I take Scripture for what it is, that He is as close to me as my brother, as close to me as sitting into the chair right across from me, why is it that I can't communicate with who is supposed to be my best friend? Then I realized it wasn't God who was missing out of the other chair, it was me. I was missing. So let's look to Scripture and how do we be positioned through Scripture to have the best spot in the conversation with God? Psalm 22, verses 1 through 21. God, God, my God. I love this line. Why did you dump me miles from nowhere? Anybody ever felt like that? The psalmist is what I love about this passage, I want to take a sidebar right here. What I love about this passage is the authenticity of the words of the psalmist. Because if you think about these are very things that if you were honest, you would ask yourself. You would ask God, okay, God, why did you dump me miles from nowhere? If you've ever been in a relationship and you have been dumped, you feel like you've been dumped miles from nowhere, especially if it came out of the blue. Doubled up with pain, I called to God all day long, no answer, nothing. I keep at it all night, tossing and turning. And are you indifferent above it all, leaning back on the cushions of Israel's praise? We know you were there for our parents. They cried for your help and you gave it. They trusted and lived a good life. And here I am, a nothing, an earthworm, something to step on, to squash. Can you hear the words? And can you correlate this to yourself? Have you felt this way before? Feeling like you're so invaluable. Like, God, where are you? You're sitting in a chair and you're like staring just like this across. And it's like, God, you're nowhere to be found. I don't understand. I feel like an earthworm. Everyone pokes fun at me. They make faces at me and they shake their heads. Let's see how God handles this one. Since God likes him so much, let him help him. So now not only do you feel isolated, everybody else is pushing you into isolation as well. And to think you were my midwife at birth, setting me at my mother's breast. When I left the womb, you cradled me. Since the moment of birth, you've been my God. Then you moved far away and trouble moved next door. This line, I need a neighbor. What he's saying here is, God, I know you have been with me, but it sure feels like you're far away. Herds of bulls come at me, the raging bulls stampede, horns lowered, nostrils flaring like a herd of buffalo on the move. I'm a bucket kicked over and spilled. Every joint in my body has been pulled apart. My heart is a blob of melted wax in my gut. I'm dry as a bone. My tongue is black and swollen. They have laid me out for burial in the dirt. Now packs of wild dogs come at me. Thugs gang up on me. They pin me down hand and foot and lock me in a cage, a bag of bones in a cage stared at by every passerby. They take my wallet and the shirt off my back and throw dice for my clothes. You, God, don't put off my rescue. Hurry and help me. Don't let them cut my throat. Don't let those mongrels devour me. If you don't show up soon, I'm done for. Gored by the bulls and meat for the lions. Now I want you to think, who? How many of you can relate to these prayers? Can you relate to this conversation? Because a lot of times, and this is where I want to go with this today, a lot of times the conversation with God is incredibly one-sided because we don't want to communicate with God till we feel like we need something. Maybe you can relate, but here are a few thoughts I'd like to point out to you because this is why I believe this is so relevant to us. First, the psalmist is asking several questions simply. Why? If any of you have kids, don't you love that question? Son, go clean your room. Why? Son, go do the dishes. Why? Why? Because I said so. Why? How many of you, why? We ask why all the time. It's like, why? That's like the definitive, automatic answer when you don't understand. Why? The kids just stare at you like, why? Why? If you don't have kids, you're not going to understand. If you do, you're going to be like, there you go. Nate answers it for me. So many times, that's what our prayer life sounds like. God's like, go do this. Why? Be obedient. Why? You should go here. Why? What's the importance? Why? And we just, our response to God is, hey, you should change. Why? God, I love my life. Why? You should change your life. Why? Our answer, we answer why to everything because that's the thing we're designed to do. It's like we're almost wired inside to always question everything. So instead of just having a little bit of blind obedience and saying, okay, God, I trust you, we go, why? Why? He's even doing some complaining. And now I'm going to ask you to think about yourself. Have you ever complained about anything to anybody? Never. Not me. Some days I feel like the only reason why God gave me a wife is so I have somebody to complain to so I don't complain to somebody else. And some days I feel that way about her. I'm just saying. Tell me you haven't complained to your spouse before. Come on. I love my wife with everything that is within me, but some days it's like the greatest thing she is to me is just somebody that can tell me to be quiet. God, I guess I'm the only one. Man, I'm just like the worst person in the room today. Wow. But our conversations with the people we care about the most end up being more conversations about complaining about what our days just look like. And we do the same thing with God. It's like, God, I don't like this. God, I don't like where you have me. God, I want to be anywhere else in the world but right where I'm at. We complain like crazy. And then what do? We try to force the hand of God and we petition Him through our complaining. We petition Him through our prayers in hope that we will force His hand of favor to change our situation. You cannot force the favor of God on your life. You can just receive it. How do we receive it? You got to be willing to have conversation, which means we do what? We can talk, but more importantly, we listen. But there are two amazing character traits of the psalmist that I want to point to you today. And we're going to dive into those. You see, God desires a genuine relationship with His creation. He wants a relationship with you. But get this, I want you to hear this. Genuine relationship cannot happen without genuine conversation. So your best friend, the creator of you, wants a relationship with you that is always ongoing and always growing, but it will never get there if there is no conversation. How do we have that? Humility is essential to have genuine conversation. This idea of humility. How is it that we approach our conversations with God? If I'm in this chair and I'm having a conversation with what I believe to be God over here, what I'm in faith talking to, how do I approach those prayers? Do I approach them with arrogance? Do I approach them with frustration? Do I approach them with anger? Do I approach them with flat out all the emotions and I'm just kind of spewing all my feelings out? You know what's amazing about God? Is He'll listen to it all. Some days I wonder if God's up in heaven just like, man, He just wants to take care of all of His people. And He wants to take care of you. He wants to take care of me. And He is listening over and over again. And all He wants for you is to grow in a relationship with Him. But we're usually over here, so busy, caught up in what it is that we've got going on, so busy, caught up in what is struggling in our life, that we never really tune in to what God wants us to tune into. We're on a different frequency. Humble prayers will open doors to rooms that arrogance will keep you out of. You see, we got to push our arrogance aside. We have to push our uncomfort aside. It's like, okay, God, I know I need to have this conversation with you. God, I know we need to be able to communicate back and forth, but I'm going to step outside of my uncomfort zone sometime. I'm going to have to kind of push my own desires away. And sometimes I'm going to have to tune into what else is going on and tune out of what I think is going on, and I'm going to tune in directly to you. You see, we got to learn that God is bigger than our questions, bigger than our doubts, and He's bigger than our frustrations. As in, a daughter could not have a relationship with her father without conversation. I could not have a healthy relationship with my wife unless we had conversation. As David could not have healthy relationship with God without conversation. We cannot have healthy relationship with God when we can't talk with Him just like He's right across the room. And you're not going to get there overnight. Don't expect to be an intercessor tomorrow. God bless those who are intercessors because they are necessary and they are needed in our world today. You see, to me, in my growth, you guys know I'm a very transparent person. Taking time to pray is the hardest thing in my journey with God. I am a task-oriented person. My battery's charged when I check off that task item. It is hard for me to push the pause button. I've had to relearn how to pray in my life because I used to feel, because of how I was raised in church, that if I didn't find a closet by myself for an hour, I was insignificantly not growing in my relationship with God. I've had to relearn that one of the best places that I can give God all of me is by sitting in my truck when I'm all alone driving from job site to job site and going, I don't need to listen to sports talk radio. I can talk with God. Dalton and I had a conversation just a week and a half ago about this. Because we are so wired to think if we see somebody, it's like, if I don't do it just like them, I am not doing it right. When all God is saying is, I just want you to take some time. Whether it's the morning, whether it's the afternoon, whether it's the evening, I just want you to push pause for just a moment and sit at the chair and have conversation with me. We can't do that if we're not humble. Humility is essential. Genuine conversation should compel you towards honesty. Genuine conversation should compel you towards honesty. Do you ever, in your life, do you want a relationship with someone that you can't be honest with? And they can't be honest with you? What's going to happen to that relationship? It's going to fracture eventually, right? If you can't be honest, if you can't be you, if you can't be authentic with people on earth, do you really think you're going to be able to do that with God? Because if it fractures here, it's going to fracture there eventually. But the great thing about your Creator is He's not going anywhere. He's still sitting right in the chair. He's just waiting for you. Just waiting for you. Why does it seem like in our culture today we have a significant undervalue of the word honesty and the characteristic of honesty? Because it's like we're always geared and we're always wired to try and grow, and it doesn't in our jobs, in our finances, and it doesn't matter who we hurt, it doesn't matter who we kick on, it doesn't matter who we hit in the face, it doesn't matter who we spit on. As long as I end up okay, forget all these other people here who've been caught up in my wake of just torture. Like honesty is something we don't. It's like our climb to the top leaves a wake of people who are hurting, and Jesus is saying, look at all these people you had the opportunity to influence, but you haven't taken the time to sit at the chair, so you have no idea the damage that's been done over here. And when we decide to sit in the chair and conversate with God, we gain a whole new passion for the people of the world who hurt, for the people of the world who are struggling, for the people of the world who are isolated, who we have the opportunity to reach. Momentum comes in your life when you start realizing your life is not about you, it's not about your dreams, it's not about what you want for yourself. Your life is about getting in tune with who God is so you can help people find out who God is. If you read through Psalm 22 again, you'll have a greater understanding of the humility and the honesty of the prayer. Maybe we should replicate that. You see, we start thinking of honesty, and we're like, well, I'm just not going to lie. Honesty is just not really lying. I mean, it's not like God wouldn't know if we lied anyway, right? I mean, that's what we feel like we can lie to others, and they're not going to know, so if we lie to God, it's like you do realize He's all-knowing. He knows the matter and the intent of your heart. Reality, honesty is this. It's truth-telling, truth-speaking, truth-living, and truth-loving. Genuine conversation cannot happen without honesty. I read this quote from Thomas Jefferson. It said this: honesty is the first chapter in the book of wisdom. You combine humility and honesty, and you have somebody I want to spend time with. I don't need to spend time with people who are out to destroy other people. I don't need to spend time with people who are arrogant. I don't want to spend time with people who are going to do nothing but bolster their resume. I want to spend time with people who are like, hey, we're all here. We all struggle. Okay, good. Right? We all struggle. You with me? We all have issues we deal with. Honesty will guide us towards an authentic relationship with God. We have to be honest. We have to be authentic. We have to be real. You see, you don't need to be afraid of your feelings and your realities. Why? Because God is bigger than your feelings and your realities. Let's start the conversation with God like He's sitting in the chair right across from us. You don't know where to start? Simply take 5 minutes. Sit in a chair. Turn your music off. Turn the TV off. And go, okay, God, you've got 5 minutes. Speak into me whatever it is you need to speak into me. Prayer is a simple action step with monumental implications. If you today are here and you struggle with the idea of praying, you struggle with the idea of conversating with God, take a step back. Look at what it is you believe about prayer. Why is it that it's struggling? Is it something that's going over your head? Is it something that you're not understanding? And then make a commitment to regularly communicate with God with humility and honesty. You know what? If you really were to break down your faith, you really want to know what it is? It's obedience and commitment. I'm going to commit to obey. I'm going to commit to relationship. I'm going to commit to church. I'm going to commit to a spiritual family. I'm going to commit. I'm going to commit to spending time with God every day. I'm going to commit to communicating and conversating with God. But when we throw in that word commitment, because we have said yes to way too many things outside of our faith, then we start hesitating saying yes to the things we should be saying yes to within our faith. Because it's not that you don't have time. I have time. I promise you, I have time to push pause and give God 5 minutes or 10 minutes or 20 minutes of my day. But the problem is, I have said yes to far too many things outside of my relationship with God that it makes it hard and pressure-packed to start saying yes to pushing that pause button. That's not God's fault, that's mine. Some of you today are staring at me with such blank eyes, and the reality is because you've been there and you know what I'm saying. But if we don't get this right, hear me in this. If we don't get this right, the idea of growth, the idea of momentum, the idea of going anywhere in our faith, we will stay stagnant unless we get this right. Commit to regularly communicate with God with humility and honesty. You will never regret the time you invest in your relationship with God. It's always worth it. It's always worth it. And it's when we get this right, and we give God time to pour into us, when we give God time to pour into us, that's when the hand of favor starts tilting in our direction. You see what I'm saying? When we give God time, God starts showing himself to us. As the team, if you would, head on back. Got a few questions that I just want you to reflect on as we close today. What does my daily prayer life look like today? Does it exist? I want you to think about this. I want all heads bowed, all eyes closed, and I want you to really process this with God right now. What does my daily conversation life look like with God today? What am I sitting here thinking, and what am I doing? Like, okay, God, I don't even have, maybe you're struggling, and it's like, I don't even have a daily conversation. Maybe maybe you're at the point that it's like, I just need to start. I don't even know where to start. I don't even know what to do. You can sit here today and go, I need to be in the chair across from my Creator. What does my daily conversation life look like? Do I struggle to pray because of my uncomfort of the unknowns about prayer? Is it my lack of understanding? Is it my lack of what needs to happen? Is it my lack of feeling like everything in my life is going wrong, so it's like, you know what, I don't need prayer? Do I struggle with it because of my uncomforts, my unknowns? And here is our application question for the day, and I hope you will do this and you will take this to heart. What can I do today to make the necessary changes so that I can have a genuine conversation with God? What can I do today? Stop looking to tomorrow. Stop wondering what's going to happen down the road. Stop wondering what can I do later. What can I do today? Would you stand with me? Today, God, we commit to prayer with humility, with honesty. We commit to conversation, Lord, and we promise we're going to come to the table. We're going to sit down and we are going to be truthful about our realities. Because, God, you're bigger than our problems. You're bigger than our frustrations. You're bigger than the issues that we face. But, God, we're going to push that pause button, even for a moment. But, God, today, we're going to commit, maybe for the first time in our life, that, God, we are going to have communication and conversation with you. Because, God, our prayer life is significant. Our prayer life is important. Our prayer life, Lord, will set the atmosphere for the growth, for the next steps. Lord, for us growing in our relationship with you. Lord, you're just across the way in the chair right across from us. Let us not be intimidated. Let us not be uncomfortable. Let us not be frustrated. Let us not sit back in fear of the unknown because, God, we've never done it before. Don't let us look to people in the past who, Lord, we may wish we could pray like, but God, they didn't just get there by what they had to start somewhere. Help us take that first step today, committing to prayer with humility, with honesty. That, God, today, not tomorrow, not on Tuesday, not on Wednesday, but today, we are going to push that pause button. We're going to sit down in a chair and talk with you just like you're right across the room, because that's exactly where you are. You've not left us miles from nowhere. Lord, it's us who's left the table and moved on. Help us come back and have genuine conversation with you.